All right, you're listening today to Lament of Hope blog and podcast. I'm here today with Chris Zabriskie, and he is a composer. One of my favorite pieces is a piece that he wrote. Says it's a man. I am a man who will fight for your honor. It was used for a short film, actually. Um, but I am here with him today. I just wanted to find out more about him and see if we can learn a little bit more too about just um, music writing in general. So, Chris, just to start out, can you tell me what was your childhood like? How do you think you would describe it?
Oh, interesting. My childhood, uh, religious. Is probably the best way to put it. But yeah, I grew up kind of all over the place. We moved a lot,
Okay.
especially in the Pacific Northwest from early childhood, Utah for part of my childhood, and then moved to Florida when I was 10, and I was there for about 30 years.
Wow.
Off
Okay.
off and on. I moved back to the West Coast couple back and forth a couple times.
Was your
So
dad like in
yeah,
the military or something? Is that why you moved?
that's actually I tell people I move a lot, and that's their first question: is military? No, he was doing a lot of different things. Ended up in sales, but he was a radio DJ for a long time, and run a company with my uncle and my grandfather, medical company. I don't know, all sorts of stuff. Bounced around all sorts of stuff. But yeah, now he's in like high levels. I guess sales is the right way, simplest way to put it.
When you say religious, like in what way did you do a lot of like religious activities
Yes,
or
yes. I was raised Mormon, and it was just
okay.
a super big part of our lives growing up. Spent a great deal of time at church functions, just like doing church things. So I think, yeah, when you say my childhood, I immediately start thinking of like all the time I spent at church. Um, but still, nice family, big, large extended family, lots and lots of cousins, and um, yeah. I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but
Do you have
um,
like a favorite childhood memory or something you think of very fondly?
um, yeah, I guess there's plenty of that. I do, as tough as I feel like being a kid for me was. I I do get weirdly nostalgic for I guess the good things that I remember, and I channel a lot of that into my music. I feel like there's a good number of songs and albums that are very much, excuse me, specifically me thinking about my childhood. Um, and so, yeah, it would definitely be the times I got to do something creative. You know what I mean? Where I
Hmm.
had
Okay.
opportunity to learn stuff. Even when I was like a little kid, took like a stop motion animation class. I was like 4 or 5
I've
or
seen that. Those
something,
are really cool. Yeah.
and got really into that for a long time, and just and then eventually, finding music, teaching myself piano, and then video production. I do a lot of video production still to this day. Getting into just editing video and things. That was kind of my safe spot as a kid. Watching movies alone in my bedroom, that kind of stuff. Just yeah, art was just sort of always the biggest thing that interested me, just across
Hmm.
the board. So
Was
most of
there
those experiences were like things I remember of just like being overwhelmed or experiencing art for the first time and that sort of thing. It's usually my go-to.
Was there something your parents said? It could be positive or negative that is something that has stayed with you into your adulthood.
Oh no. Yes, yes, lots of trauma. I'm still carrying around from my parents. Um, no, the something good or bad. They've always been very encouraging, though, for the most part of my decisions. Of my path, especially over the last about decade. They've been very supportive and encouraging, and that's been really wonderful. So that's good. But in terms of something specific, somebody said, "Good Lord." Um, I don't know. Like I said, like I wasn't allowed to listen to a lot of. We didn't listen to a lot of like popular music when I was growing up, right? I kind of missed out on a lot of late '80s, kind of music. Uh, but then I discovered Queen at when I was
Hmm.
a teenager. It was first rock band, right? First time I heard Bohemian Rhapsody, blew my mind, and my dad kind of got all excited about it because all of a sudden I'd found the music he enjoyed as a teenager, right? And I dug a bunch of his old vinyl that was been in the garage forever, and he was supportive of that and would buy me like these classic rock CDs and stuff like that. So we really bonded over music pretty often, you know.
Hmm.
So that was helpful, you know what I mean. For the most part, he didn't love all the music that I listened to, but he, you know, encouraging of that, even though they kind of did that musical uh, exploration on my own. He was helpful for and encouraging in that way. So I don't know. I appreciate that. It seems minor, but like I said, you know, music's now my life in so many
Right.
ways,
Yeah.
and so that kind of those kind of things are super formative.
Do you, if you wrote about your life, what do you think you'd call the book?
Oh, Jesus Christ! I hope never to do that. Um, good Lord, if I had to write an autobiography, um, I don't know. Just a simple man trying to make my way through the universe. Something meaning. Don't listen to me. Maybe would be okay. I'm not sure. It's hard to have a thesis statement. I feel like so many different people in so many ways. I've been through so many phases of life that it's hard to pin down exactly. I don't know, the big picture of my life at this point. It's hard to psychoanalyze myself.
Is there like a phase of your life that you enjoyed the most?
Ooh, interesting. I definitely have a lot of nostalgia from my late teenage years. It
Hmm.
wasn't all great, but I formed a ton of relationships that I still have to this day, creative relationships. And I was working in a video store, and I had access to just like watch as many movies as I wanted to, and just like binged, you know, art and movies, and learned a ton. Really just sort of developed musically um, and visually. I feel like it was
Hmm.
really actually, I was on the right track pretty early in a lot of ways. It wasn't very good, but it was also like just a really cool experimental time for me and for music. And so it's weird to talk about, you know, high school, the best days of my life. That's not at all what I'm saying, but it was formative. And I feel like in so many ways, I'm still sort of like 16-year-old me would not believe that he is still uh, doing this today in his 40s. Basically exactly what he was doing. It feels the same sometimes. um but birth of my kid was it was a very weird, difficult time in my life, but just you know, incredible. Wouldn't change it for anything.
What was weird about it or difficult?
It was a hard time in my life. I was transitioning out of Mormonism in my early 20s. It was also, you know, I was in my early 20s, you know, newly married, and that was not going amazing. You know,
Yeah.
it was all sorts of different things. And then right after she was born, we moved from Florida to Portland, Oregon, Olympia, Washington area for a while, and then moved back to Florida about a year and a half later. And it was just like, it was very chaotic. It was very broke, you know what I mean? Trying to raise a kid, and just, yeah, that so it certainly wasn't an accident, but I didn't know what I was getting into. That Mormon culture is just like, have babies, get married and have babies. And you're like, oh, okay. Uh, and yeah, I was not prepared. So I've
Hmm.
been making it up as I go the rest of the time, but luckily it all turned out well, and she's amazing. So
How old were you at the time? Were you like in your early 20s or?
yeah, 22, 23, I guess. Let me see,
Okay.
23, or actually just short of 23. Yeah, I was 22 when she was born.
Now, what do you think has been the hardest time of your life, the hardest season?
Okay, yeah, actually, it was right around when my kid was born. The same answer. So many highs and lows in that period, but that was really, really, really tough. That was very difficult. Because
Was it difficult in the sense that you were also afraid of being a bad dad or?
um, I mean that you know, she was the my number one priority amidst all the chaos that was going
Yeah.
on. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't worried about being bad. Really, I'm doing the best I can all the time. But more just, yeah, how is this all going to work out? How am I going to provide? How am I going
Mm.
to? What does the future hold? There was just no future. But that was when my relationship with my parents was and family was at its absolute lowest. And I was, like I said, losing my faith that I had at the time,
Yeah.
and moving and just like not, yeah. So it was very chaotic. And I think second to that was actually when I moved to New York a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Even though it has also been phenomenal, and I will never leave Brooklyn. I love this place. I was alone for the first time in my entire life. You know, I had just gotten out of marriage, my second marriage, and came up here, and that culture shock, that I did it to myself, and I'm glad I did it. But that transition, you know, it was a dark, lonely period for me. I made some very dark
Hmm.
music during that time, you know, but I still loved it. I wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't trade that for the world either. But yeah, there's been some difficult. I couldn't go to dark places, you know, probably shows in some of my music, but those were definitely one of the toughest moments in my life for sure.
When you were talking about the Mormon faith, why did you leave it?
Because it's a bunch of bullshit. It turns out that everything I was taught was wrong. Basically, church is really good at hiding its past and hiding its money and just not letting people know what's really going on. And its history is just disgusting and abhorrent. And they didn't teach me any of that growing up. You know,
Hmm.
the early days of the church, and you know, I went from being, I thought, devout. You know, I really believe this stuff, to an absolute, you know, I'm basically atheist. Really, just like all of a sudden, like, okay, nothing is real. In
Hmm.
a matter of minutes, it feels like, once I really started researching, you know, and learning all these things that nobody taught me. The rest of the world knew, but they keep from you because they want your money. And so
How did
and
you
that
get,
continues today.
I
You
was
know,
going to say, how did you start researching that or questioning it?
oh, see, that's such a long process. You're talking about deprogramming from like cult programming. Basically, you're talking about totally rewiring your brain, dealing with all sorts of regret and.
Well, I guess how did it
Uh,
start? Because it sounded like if you
I
came from
guess what
really
I'm
devout.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that it's a slow process. It's really not
Okay.
a, I say it took a few minutes, but to get to that point took years. To get to that point of, you know what, I just want to know the truth, no matter how
Right.
hard it's going to be to me, no matter how difficult it's going to feel. I would just prefer the actual truth no matter what. And then you like actually start looking. But before that, it's all, you know, oh, don't look at that. It's all lies. None of that's, don't worry about any of that. Keep your faith, keep steady,
Right.
that sort of thing. And so it took a while to decompose, and it definitely started as a teenager in so many ways. Just who I was just sort of not incongruous with the church. Really wants a very nicely molded person in a box. They have a very strict, in so many ways, vision of what a person should be to be successful. And I just never really fit into that mold. But the older I got, and you know, going to church as an adult was suddenly like, what is going on here? This actually sucks. It's totally different from when you're a kid. I went out to BYU for a couple of years to go to college, and that was a horrible experience all around. And so many things all just kind of came together, and eventually those doubts creep in, and you're like, wait a second, what if I'm wrong right now? I've been taught I'm right my whole life. What if I'm wrong? That just took many years, many little things, many confrontations with people and family, and then finally realizing what's going on. It's like, yeah, no, I have to make a break. And it's that type of religion, like Jehovah's Witnesses are similar, or even Scientology. They're really all very similar and about the same size. They shun people who leave. If you're not in the club, you are like out of the club. And you
Okay.
know, there's so many people I grew up with that I'll never talk to again. That will never talk to me. Um, and that extended to family for quite some time, really, if not continues. You know, it's like it's not quite as bad as Jehovah's Witnesses shun, but that scares a lot of people away from, you know, what if I lose everything? What if I lose all my friends? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, you actually do. And this has happened to me a couple times in my life, and it's like just gotta just gotta power through it, I guess. But that puts you off from it for a long time.
How did you transfer to more of an atheistic view where like there's no God, there's no meaning?
So yeah, I don't know if I. I reject labels of all kinds generally, so I don't even know if I
Okay.
call myself an atheist. But I've seen, people I know, people I've heard, people I've talked to, who've left. It's definitely Mormonism is just so fundamentalist and so rigid, and so we have all of the truth. Everybody else is completely wrong. This is the only way that you're going to get, excuse me, to heaven. Basically, this is it. Everybody who's not Mormon doesn't get to the top tier heaven. Um, and sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. This is all a lot. I haven't talked about this stuff in a while. Um,
Totally
when
good.
you have that type of this is the one true thing, when that falls apart and you look at everything else, you're like, this is all exactly the same to me now. Like, if that's not true, this one thing, all these other churches and faiths are really just not all that different in so many ways, especially in their theology, not all that different. And so you just go like, okay, well then nothing is real. I'm done. I'm just not going to think about it. So nobody knows what's going to happen after you die, I know, but at the same time, I'm not hopeful for anything interesting to happen to me when I die here. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not definitely not a militant atheist or anything, but I don't. It doesn't matter. I'm concerned about now and not later.
What do you think makes life meaningful now for you in the time of life you're in?
I'm a kid, and art. Those are the
Yeah.
two things I really care about. And cool people, good people, friends, interesting people. All these things make life worth living. My kid specifically, though, not just because she's amazing. She's actually just in the other room. Um, she gives me just a ton of hope for the future generations. Like,
Mm,
her and her friends are just so incredible and so smart and so emotionally intelligent compared to my generation. You know,
mm,
that gives me a ton of hope, keeps me alive. I know there's a lot of terrible things happening in the world every day, but it's easy for me to get down about that type of stuff. But she keeps me going in that way. 'Cause she's just absolutely her and people like her just they're gonna take over someday, and it's that it gives me hope.
what
Um,
kind of ways do you see that she is like just more emotionally in tuned and more alive in some ways than you were as a kid?
she just had access to. Sorry about the. You can probably hear the police sirens. I'm in Brooklyn. It's gonna happen. She and her kids of her age have just had so much more access to information and art and culture and news and
Mm,
politics and just everything than I could have ever dreamed of at her age. Just totally different world. I can't believe how much the world's changed since I graduated like 2000. She's 18, so like me in 2000 compared to her today, it was just like a totally different world. It's wild. Um, and so all of that has just made them so world smart, art smart, um, but given them access to different ways of looking at the world, different people. The
hmm.
internet's made it so if you can find your tribe somewhere, you can find people that you vibe with, for better or for worse sometimes, for sure. But it's really the amount of brain power that it takes to live in this world. We did not evolve to see this many advertisements in a single day or whatever. Her generation is going to be uniquely qualified to deal with the challenges of the future, I feel like. So
Hmm.
yeah, just
What
good
what
people.
is something about the world that you'd change if you could?
God, I mean, everything. Literally everything.
That's everyone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to run the world. I don't care. I don't want power of any kind. I'm skeptical of anybody who wants it, obviously. But the um, big picture thing, because you're supposed to say, war, hunger, homelessness, just the things, get the rats out of New York City, pick something you're passionate about. And um, it's also overwhelming. I feel like I can't care about everything sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's just
Yeah.
so much going on that it tugs at you, and it hurts to see these images in Israel, and it hurts or in Gaza. It hurts to um, watch what's happened. politically in this country over the last 20 years, and it hurts to see people, on the street in New York City.
Yeah.
What can I do? Is you feel so helpless sometimes, you know what I mean? Um, but man, I don't know. I think if I had to pick a pet thing, though, if it wasn't just a magic wand of just like make war go away, make assholes disappear, make fascism disappear, um, something practical, I would tax churches. I think is maybe a good start. I don't know. I feel like I said, I'm sorry to bring it back to this. You got me thinking about it, but organized religion is has causes a lot more issues than it solves personally, and I wish we could break free of that need to worship something, to give somebody else power and money for making you feel good, for telling you what you want to hear, for I don't know, a million different things. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be controversial. I'm sorry.
No, you're
you
good.
know, I don't mean to be sorry to be controversial or whatever. I'm just sorry to take it in this direction or whatever. But yeah, I feel like a lot of problems can be solved with money, and I think there's a lot of money sitting in bank accounts and real estate and things that churches own that's not getting taxed that could go a long way to solving a lot of problems in this country.
Hmm.
Um, so that is something I feel like we should do. We should look into the financial records of these places, and they're not as charitable as they say that they are.
What
Give that money, let that money go to something good and people who need it.
what time period do you think you'd live in if you couldn't live in now?
Oh God, this is kind of like a question I ask at bars to get to know people. If you had a time machine and can go back and see any live show ever, what live show could you go see? It only goes to live shows. So, yeah, I would like to see the late '60s.
Okay.
It's very rockist of me. I know it's very Rolling Stone-ish or whatever. It's very. I don't mean to idolize necessarily the period as idealistic or anything like that. I don't give a shit about Woodstock really. It's more um, uh, the change that was happening then, the experimentation in art, and I would just get to go see a bunch of amazing bands and movies. I would love to have seen that time for so many reasons. Beyond that, I wouldn't want to live. I don't think I'd want to live much beyond the '60s because it used to be terrible to be alive for so long in so many places. The world has changed in the last couple hundred years, and I like the access to information I have. I like being able to go places and do things, and going too far back in time, yeah, is not actually that interesting to me. I think so. I'll say the late '60s.
Is there like someone you look up to in the present day?
um, like artistically, or just
Could
in
be
general,
artistically
or
or it could be in general. I mean, it sounds like you really look up to your daughter in some ways, which is cool.
oh my god, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Learn something new from her every single day. But I keep answering that. She keeps being my answer for everything. So let me think of for something else. I mean, there's a ton of great things happening out there. Who's that I look up to? I try not to idolize people too hard.
Right.
I and a lot of my heroes are definitely dead. I actually was gonna answer my grandmother or my godmother, but they both passed away within the last couple of years.
Oh, why would you
Very
pick
very
them?
close with them. They're just amazing. I didn't have a ton of great female role models growing up, especially in my culture. It's very male driven. But they were just my godmother gave me an education in classic film when I was young.
Mm,
She was just an incredible woman, and my grandmother, who just passed a couple weeks ago, actually, was I spent so much time with my grandparents on that side of the family in Olympia, Washington, over the years. Many like months away from my family, working with them at their fruit stand at the farmers market and
mm.
things like that. They were just very, very impactful on my life. You know what I mean? I've
Was she
always
Mormon
very
as
much looked up
well?
to them.
for a while, or?
My grandmother, yes, but they left after I left.
Oh,
I
wow,
gave
okay.
yeah, they weren't really all that active for a long time, but they worked up the courage to officially, cancel their membership just shortly after I did, and
Mm,
they were very helpful during that transition for me too, very supportive, and I was lucky to live near them during all that, which I haven't very much during my life. So they were, and the same with my godmother, who also lived in Olympia. They were just all so amazing, and yeah, I do very much look up to them. Uh, Artistically these days, yeah, there's just so many people making amazing things. I am a, I admitted Radiohead nerd, and anything Tom York does is just amazing to me. He had
mhm,
an incredible Radiohead had an incredible impact on me when I was a teenager, and it's he and his crew there. It's been amazing to watch them grow artistically since the
mm.
'90s, and but stay very true to themselves and very make what they want to make, and it's just intensely inspiring. Very few careers quite like Tom's and Radiohead. So that's definitely a modern, you know, person I've grown up with, still around, still making art. Who's just it's insane. Just knocks it out of the park every time.
Why do you do art?
I'm compelled, I guess. I don't always know. I've always been drawn to. It started with film, really, but at the same time, music's always been fascinating to me.
Mm,
And I really, yeah, I got into creating both of them right at the same time. I was like 11 years old, and I had access to two VCRs at the same time, and I was like, hey, I can edit. I can put something on this tape over this tape, and then had a little camera. Well, my dad got at some point. I'd make little stop motion videos and that kind of stuff. And but at that same time, I got the movie The Sting, Robert Redford, Paul Newman, 1973. You ever see The Sting? I saw that
I've
when I was a kid, uh, around that time, 10, 11, and loved the movie. I absolutely loved the movie, but the music absolutely just blew me away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was just Scott Joplin ragtime music, and I went, I want to learn to play those songs. It was instantly like, how do I do that? How do I play ragtime music? It's like a leap that no 11-year-old in 1993 would ever be making. But I need to play those, so I started learning the piano. I took a
mm.
few lessons for a couple months. They were terrible. I just, I literally just sat there with the Scott Joplin sheet music and listened to it, taught myself to read music, and just I'm not saying I'm a great piano player. Like I said, very self-taught. I'm very sloppy. I'm very bad, really. But film, music, all that stuff just kind of came together at the same time. I was immediately like composing my own stuff, and
Mm.
I just, yeah, I'm just absolutely driven. It is the only thing I care about, people, and I care about art, and there's just nothing, nothing else to me. Most of the time, it's all I want to do. And every time I've tried to work in something that wasn't creative, it has been so absolutely soul crushing,
Yeah.
that I had to. It's one of the reasons I came up to New York too. It's just like I have to just go this direction. Like I will not be happy in any other line of work besides making art. So
Well, how would you encourage, because I have a lot of people in my own life who are starting up and wanting to do art, but it's like impossible for them to make money or to support themselves. So then you've got the 9 to 5 job and then you'll do the art. But then when by the time you get home from the 9 to 5, you're tired, exhausted. And so then you got to do a little bit and then you need to go to bed and then you need to do it again in the morning. And so it's kind of just, it can become discouraging when they're not
yes,
sure, will this ever get anywhere? How would you encourage people in that?
I have lived that life for a long time. In many ways, I still am. I mean, music is and Spotify income and all that kind of stuff. It's paying quite a lot of bills, but it's not fully supporting me yet. It doesn't help that I share my music for free and I don't make people pay for it. But even then, I'm composing a score for a television episode right now. I can't talk about, but I am like doing some freelance composing. I still do some freelance video work on the side, so I'm still in that world. Really, I'm not really totally full time music yet. But part of me
What
doesn't
do
know if
you
I ever
do?
want to be. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, what do you do outside of the music to support yourself?
So yeah, I mean, this goes right into what you just asked. That making music, music being the predominant source of my income, hasn't happened until just the last few years.
Okay.
And it was all a side project, and I had 9 to 5s, and it was all. In fact, it wasn't even like a side project in that like a side hustle. It was a, I just want to do this. I'm not trying to make money on it. I never was. Um, I think that there's a lot of advantages. I understand you're tired at the end of a workday. It's hard to be creative and all that stuff. Um, I just don't. I don't know if I totally agree with the sentiment, though. I think that's chickening out just a little bit. Honestly, I know it sounds totally unempathetic, non-empathetic, but um, you can make the time. People have more time than they realize.
Hmm.
You can absolutely make the time. And maybe you're not going to have time to create your magnum opus right away, right? It's not going to be perfect, and you're not going to any number of different things. You have to work inside your limitations. You have to create those. Like, having limitations as a creative person is a good thing. It's going to focus your art, and you're going to make something,
Hmm.
and then you move on to the next thing. So if at that point in your life you're really busy all the time, but you really want to make art about being really busy all the time and not having time to make stuff. Like, really use it to your advantage. So yeah, I've been making a lot of albums for a long time. I will, full disclosure, say that for about 7 years, last decade, I was in a tech job, video production. So like I said, like, I've been in video production and editing and doing music videos, and now I do live visuals for bands and that kind of stuff. I do a lot of projection work. I'm working at the New York Public Library for all weekend here, doing a bunch of projection work for a big event. I still do that kind of stuff, but the I really think that. Oh, I was just saying that I had a 4-day work week at this cushy tech job. It was a good video job, and so I had every Friday off. I had a little more time to make stuff, but even before that, I still you just make the time.
Yeah.
I think really I got into making ambient music. Uh, Not because I really listen to a lot of ambient music. I really don't. I like early stuff, or the pioneers, but I don't listen to a lot of modern stuff. I'm a very rock and roll metal kind of guy, really. But I used to write a lot of songs, used to sing, used to play in bands, play drums and that kind of stuff. But then when I had a kid, I'm a single dad with a toddler, basically, and I can't make a bunch of noise at night after work. She's going to sleep at 7 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, I need something I can make with headphones on. I need to quit singing. I need to do something here where it's quiet in the background, and I can do this late at night and not see that as a limitation, but just go like, okay, well, I'm just going to pivot. I'm just going to make some art within these restrictions right now.
Right.
Basically, people can do it. I know, your situation may vary as from artist to artist, but just don't let the world drag you down. Like you're, don't let the man get you. Don't let that company. They say they love you. They don't care about you. You know what I mean? Don't give them too much of your energy. Really do put that energy into yourself. Focus on that stuff. Make that stuff happen. Stop binging The Office or whatever. Get up and make some art.
I was gonna ask you, you mentioned your daughter again. I wanted to ask this earlier and you reminded me. How long were you a single dad? Like, have you always been a single dad for the most part, or?
Um, I mean, it's okay. This is complicated. It's definitely not like her mom wasn't in the picture, but she's been living, basically full time with me. But it's still, yeah, not. This is all very very complicated. I
Right,
certainly don't want
okay.
to talk shit about either of my ex-wives. They're both wonderful people, and I still love them very much. We're still very good friends. But yeah, she was with me most of the time, going to school in my school district, kind of thing, for her entire life. But there
Okay.
was a period right after her mom and I divorced that it was just the two of us. Then I got remarried in 2010, and so for the last decade, she's had a stepmom. Well,
Okay.
for that whole decade, 2010 to 2020, basically, so I wasn't, yeah, totally alone in that way. But when she was a toddler, when she was really young, yeah, there was a good few years where it was just the two of us.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure to provide and get money for sure, so I can understand.
Yeah, very, very luckily, I got a job at the Orlando Public Library. what's not the name of the Orange County Library System, Orlando's public library. That was a godsend at the time, just absolute godsend. I can't believe I
Mm.
got it. It led to so many other video jobs after that. So very lucky, because before that I had no steady income. I had no career of any kind. I was just sort of bouncing around from college to college and retail job to retail job.
Yeah.
That was kind of the beginning of it. So very fortunate, and that allowed me to be able to like take care of her at the time. So
Which
luckily.
piece of your music do you relate to the most? Like, do you think there's a piece of your music that you've written that you feel identifies who you are the best?
Ooh, interesting. I try not to listen to my music very often. I kind of make an album and just sort of forget about it. So I've made a lot of music, and I've probably forgotten about most of it. Um, I guess I might actually. Oh God. Um, who I really am. Oh, I hate that this is probably the answer, but it's probably Undercover Vampire Policeman. Honestly, I hate to say it because I don't like that. It's not like I don't like that album, but I'm very vulnerable when it's just me playing the piano. So I've made a couple of records that are just basically just piano.
Yeah.
That's very vulnerable for me. That's intense when people are hearing you play the piano. It's different when it's abstract sounds or things that ambient kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very much like, oh, this is all they can hear. Do not mess it up. But so I don't like doing it too often, and I don't want to be a piano guy because I'm really not like a good piano player. So I don't want it to be the thing that people associate me with. But that one, and the last piano record I made a couple years ago, Soft Rock Champion, I made that right after I got up here. And those are both just torturously dark, intensely personal albums that I think actually, I want to give you a much cooler answer. But I think it's actually that piano stuff. I try to use it sparingly
Hmm.
because it's intense for me, and it's always so much more emotional in so many ways than other instruments can be. And I end up just channeling that and going like, well, if we're going to be this vulnerable, like let's just go all the way with it. I'm not here to
Yeah.
entertain. Those have been some of the ones where like, whether I like it or not, I am really emoting. I'm really letting some shit out, and um, yeah, the song titles I think kind of reflect that in some way. So yeah, it's actually kind of the darkest answer I could give you in so many ways. But I've had some really dark periods in my life, and that those albums I think actually have accurately reflected that balance of despair and hope that tightrope
Hmm.
that I walk my entire life.
When did you write the piece? I guess how did you come up with the idea, the I am a man who will
I'm a
fight
man
for
who will
your
fight for
honor?
your
Yeah.
honor. Yeah, that was one of my earliest experiments with electronic music. I just
It's very
pivoted.
unique. Yeah.
I mean, it's also kind of bad in so many ways. I mean, people perceive it differently, but on my end, it's very that all that early music. It was my first time uh, messing with this type of software to create sounds and synthesizer stuff and things in a computer. Been using microphones and a 4-track and an acoustic guitar, before that.
Right.
So I was just transitioning into that and like, what does this do? And then I'll be like, that's cool, that's a song, you know. Um, and so I think that entire record, "I'm a Man Who Will Fight for Your Honor," is the album title too. That entire record could be reproduced by anyone right now with like a demo copy of Propellerhead's Reason. It's like all stock sounds. Like it is just me like trying some stuff out. But for whatever reason, yeah, that song specifically has just been hitting people a certain way since the moment I put it out. It has
I
never
know, because
stopped, and I
well,
don't.
it just seems very, yeah, very, it is very emotive, even though it may be simple.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it definitely was. The title is one that I had been kicking around for years because it's straight up stolen lyric reference to Peter Cetera's "Glory of Love" from The Karate Kid Part Two, from the chorus of that. And I like the idea of taking that turn of phrase. I'm always just sort of struck. I'm often struck by certain turns of phrase in English, and I loved how that looked when it was written. I love the sentiment behind it, but I also like the idea of recontextualizing it and just kind of stealing it out of there and then putting it over something totally different. It's not to drive like sales or streams. This was long before any of that. It was
Right.
before, it was just. I don't know. I was in a band back in the day that we put out a record called Toto 4. It was just funny to take mainstream stuff and mess with it, but I really liked the turn of phrase, and so that was made at night while my kid was asleep, and in my brain it's for her. Like I wrote it for her, and when I'm talking about "I'm a man, fight for your honor," I'm talking about her. Kind of psyching myself up into my future at the time, but yeah, it's just really connected with people for whatever reason. And what was I gonna say? I was gonna say one more thing about it. I can't remember now. But yeah, I don't know. But people had just it just hit people just right, and I still play it live to this day. It's actually really fun to play live.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess, oh, I know what I was gonna say. I just it's been used in so many YouTube videos about depression, and it's soundtracked so many sad, melancholy things over the years, um, that I feel like it's definitely like if you look through the YouTube comments section of that video, there's suicide notes, and there's people like psyching each other up to not kill themselves, and there's people like, this is the saddest thing I've ever heard. And that has always been terrifying and surprising to me, because like I don't feel like I was really sad when I made it, and I wasn't trying to make a song about sadness. To me it's much happier. It's melancholy, I get it, but to me it's not about depression, it's about endurance.
I
It's
was gonna
about,
say, yeah, that's what it
like, it's
seems to me
kind
too.
of
Yeah.
the theme of the album from the album cover on through, that it's just long, it's repetitive, it's grindy, it's noisy. I'm like, no one is ever going to like this, but I think that every time I make anything, I'm like, well, people are going to hate this. Let's put it out. Um, yeah, it feels weirdly like misunderstood from my perspective in the last 15 years almost. But it's also been really fascinating to watch people have really different reactions to things, just to hear different
Yeah.
things in it, to like um, approach it in their own ways. And I learned a ton about that, about art, and about making music from that, the reception to that song to this day. Like you say, you mentioning it, like this happens all the time to me. It's the most mentioned song to me, and it's one of my very first little experiments with electronic music. I don't know, I'll never escape it, but luckily I like it. So.
Well, one last question for you. I appreciate your time. What is the biggest assumption people make about you?
That I am a musician, or that I'm a video guy. I think most people know me as a guy who makes music, or they know me as a guy who knows a lot about video, or video editor, or any number of things. When the reality is, like, I am very much both of these things put together. And so, like, my live shows are very visual. I do all the visuals for my stuff, and it's a much more of a multimedia experience, because
Hmm.
that's really me. So like, but I say live visuals, it's not just like pretty lights bouncing. I'm usually playing actually whole movies. I have a treasure trove of VHS tapes over here from my childhood and from all over the place. Um, and yeah, I like letting people know who I am through both of those things. So, but yeah, I'm more complicated than just some guy who plays piano, or just some guy who knows about projectors or whatever. So those, I think, be the biggest assumptions, even though that's totally valid and totally reasonable to approach me that way. But yeah, I'm definitely a composer and a video artist, and I
Hmm.
don't that'll never change. So, like you say, people want to get out of their 9 to 5 and get into making art all the time. It's like, maybe those things are a little more flexible and nuanced than you make it sound. Like, get out of a shitty job if you're in a crap job, but like, maybe use it to your advantage. Find ways to kind of blend these things together. Maybe you like more than you think you like. So, I
Right.
think
Well, Chris,
most artists are much more diverse in what they're capable of creating than they sometimes realize. It's easy to pigeonhole yourself as an artist into one thing, and like, this is what I do.
yeah.
Got to keep experimenting.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for talking with us, and it was fascinating to learn more about you, and also I think it's refreshing to hear just also just genuine conversation and just, openness about who you are and what you think.
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of what I do.